You're listening to the Shit You Can't Make Up podcast, a conversation with friends, hosted by Marisol Sanchez.
Hey, hope everyone is having a good week. I want to do a podcast today on being. The title of this podcast is going to be something about being Latina, and actually, unfortunately, for up until now, a huge portion of my life, it's kind of a self-hating one at that. A couple things, especially family. You've got to listen to this all the way through, because if you take anything I say out of context, it could sound offensive or racist, and I don't mean it at all. I'm just trying to tell you the story of growing up with, I guess, immigrant parents and being first generation American and what it's like, and growing up in Miami, and growing up being Hispanic, and for me personally, I've alluded in earlier podcasts, didn't have the best of childhoods, so somewhere in my psyche, in my head, that really, really scary place, I early on had negative connotations about being Latin. Basically, I wanted to be white. I grew up wanting to be white. I never articulated that. I never, even in my own mind, never said I wanted to be white. But that's what I wanted. There was a distinct difference between my life and the life of white kids who weren't on assisted lunch, and who, I remember just being amazed that they could rent movies at Blockbuster. I really remember being jealous of my friends who could rent movies at Blockbuster, because my life was the 99-cent video store, which, again, nothing's wrong with any of this, but this is, again, my head. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, but I'm going to say phrases that, again, if taken out of context, could completely sound racist and offensive. That is not my intention. But this is the shit I'm laying out on this podcast is me and this one I did actually on my own. I didn't do this with a therapist, and I didn't do this with yoga. Actually, this one it took a few years. It took some thinking, some talking, some reconnecting with family to come full circle on this one. But I'm proud of myself because I did it, and I'm so fucking happy to be Latina. I think some of my best qualities come from that. So that I ever disparaged it in my own mind or in my own spirit, is sucks for me. But so let me tell you the whole story. So mother Honduran, father Spanish. I don't know where they meet, but they marry here in New York. Have my brother. I believe my brother is the first born American child from either side. I think from either my mother or my father. And then me. So I was born in New York. Don't really remember much about that period of time. I feel like I grew up in Miami. That's when I think of my childhood. I think of Miami. Hialeah. Hialeah. So I might say some stuff about Cuban politics. Again, do not take out of context. You have to hear the whole thing to understand where I'm coming from. Alright. And this is going to be one of those radial discussions. I'm going to try to keep it linear, but I want to just point out when I realized that this was an issue for me. Because it's really embarrassing and it's really. But when I realized, there's a couple moments leading up to like, okay, you really need to work this shit out. Was I had this hatred for Jennifer Lopez. Let's sit with that for a second. For no reason. She, she became famous from the movie Selena, which was based on like Tex-Mex singer that was tragically killed. And her career, she's fucking Jennifer Lopez. What doesn't she do? And I couldn't stand her. But it was weird. It was a weird hatred because it wasn't born out of jealousy. It wasn't born out of her success. There was just something about her that I didn't like, and I really didn't. I was living my life. I wasn't sitting and analyzing my dislike of her. But here's the fucked up thing: is as much as I disliked her, I loved her music. Like that's the music I cling to. Just But it was like, and I actually liked her perfumes and her style, and I actually really like everything about her now. But back then, this was many years ago. I mean, God, I was scrapbooking. Talk about not living the life you're meant to be. I was scrapbooking, and I say that because it was something that I did and I didn't like doing, but I still did it because I thought I had to, because I thought that meant if I scrapbook, that equated to me being a good mother. But I'm not a crafty person, so all those scrapbooks were actually I love them now, labors of love. But anyway, I was at a scrapbooking event, and I don't know why her name came up, but I know that her name came up, and I said I don't remember what I said, but my reaction was strong enough that a very good friend of mine looked over at me with concern. Like it just, it made me pause and be like, you really need to like, what's your shit with Jennifer Lopez? And that was probably the first time I'm like, I know Spanish. I speak it. I speak it fluently. My family still, I'm 42, still always act surprised when I can converse with them. I can speak Spanish, motherfuckers. But I didn't teach my children Spanish, which is something I actually have like a lot of shame about. But Spanish isn't my first language. English is. I think in English. But anyway, I didn't teach my kids Spanish. So that was a thing. But I was like sign number 2 that, I don't really, I wasn't embracing my culture or my history. What else? So what happened? Okay, so we're in Miami. I guess I identified being poor with being Spanish. I mean, just to cut to the chase. Um, I associated white privilege. I I looked, you know, I paid attention and I noticed a vast difference in the cultures, and I was so much more attracted to, you know, the white culture and the Spanish culture. Now, you know, to be kind to myself, I can, there was these formative years where, I thought all Spanish, well, I probably, you could argue, I thought all kids got hit. And that might be true, like, that might just be a generational thing, like spanking, God forbid we spank this freaking generation. but they surely, it's a total, we're just raising our kids totally different. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Um, I was young. It was little stuff. It was the little things. It was like, you know, I know comedians have done a really good job of noticing the difference. Like if you, Eddie Murphy, when he did that bit in Raw about like McDonald's versus the homemade hamburger, like that's what it kind of felt like growing up, first generation. Like you wanted McDonald's, but you got homemade hamburgers, and not even like the frozen patty on a grill. I mean, basically, my whole parenting style was to do the opposite of what I grew up with. Um, Not that that makes any of this, you know, I mean, there's a lot of embarrassment I have over it now that that's how I felt. And, um, anyway, the third thing, first I noticed that I had an irrational disdain for Jennifer Lopez. um, didn't teach my children Spanish. I literally married, an Englishman. I mean, I didn't even marry an American. I married the whitest person you could, you know, imagine, and had two and a half very white children. Um, but anyway, the third thing was, this is that my children are getting older and they've met my family here and there. And my mom visited a lot when they were very young, but not really didn't spend holidays with her or anything like that. We always went to my in-laws, always, for holidays. And, but I guess about 2 years ago, it's, my long lost nephew. This is like shit you can't make up. I was on a field trip with my twins, and they're I think in sixth grade that year, and we're at the marsh, the marshes, and my Facebook starts kind of blowing up with my nephew's then fiance contacting me on Facebook. I had changed my name back to my maiden name. And he's the son of my brother that passed away, the one that was 18 years older. I've talked about him in previous podcasts, but when he died, we lost contact with his ex-wife and her child, my nephew. And I do believe my mother and my brothers and everyone, this is pre-internet, but even post-internet, did try to locate him, but we just never were able to do it. But they found us. Technically speaking, for the fucking record, found me. That's just an inside family thing. And lo and behold, this is all happening on my kids' field trip. We're leaving the field trip, and we're plugging into the car phone and having a conversation with their cousin that it's even questionable if they even knew about him. I mean, they may have, but it was not something. I just did not talk a lot about my background or about my culture. It was sort of like I didn't talk about anything, and sadly, like the last few years, I've like shared everything. So my kids have this unique perspective now of my family, of my mom's family, and they understand, I think, a lot of things, and they really love my family, and they love their cousins and uncles and my cousins, and it's a batshit crazy family. But I really don't know many families that are not. So, and there's a lot of stories within that in this family. But yeah, for the majority of my life, I was a self-hating Latina. I should start a support group. I am no longer a self-hating Latina. I'm very proud. I love it. I discovered an affinity for tequila last year. Could never really drink much. Didn't like wine. Never could consume beer. So, you know, I guess I found my culture. Love Spanish music. Love salsa. Love merengue. I don't know. It's all good. I miss Miami. I miss when I go back now to, which I never ever thought I would say ever. I even miss my Cuban friends. I mean, I love my Cuban friends. I felt suffocated by Cuban politics when I was young. I really did, because even though we lived in Miami and it was of a lot of cultures, the predominant culture is Cuban. So it's even it's like, it's not only, I wasn't American, I wasn't white, I wasn't Cuban. Like, I wasn't surrounded by a bunch of Spaniards or a bunch of Hondurans. It's a bunch of Cubans. And I think part of us growing up, at least I don't know again if this is a cultural thing or a generational thing, we weren't meant to speak. Like we didn't speak openly around adults. We didn't share our opinions. And so many church functions and other things that I would just sit there and have to listen to people be crazy and just have to sit there and not make a face and not, just in my head, just be like, this is some fucked up shit. That doesn't even make sense. So those were my struggles. My other struggle was trying really hard not to become a fan of Power 96 radio station, which my brother, I think, took care of that. It was like a house music, was very popular. And that was the station. That song, boom, 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 let's go back to my room. Oh my god. Anyway, thankfully my brother took me to see The Who, and my musical taste took a different avenue. Still eclectic though. Still, shockingly, the person I probably listened to the most, aside from Jennifer Lopez and Bruce Springsteen, is Eddie Santiago. That's my go-to when I have to clean. So listen to a lot of music when I clean or podcast. So anyway, that's this podcast. I hope I haven't offended anything like her.